Janet Mertens, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hello, John. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Toronto, Canada. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about a recent report out from the Josh Bersin Company titled The Definitive Guide to Recruiting Human-Centered Talent Acquisition. I love everything in this space, so it's going to be a super fun conversation. I'll share your bio here in just a minute. But as the VP of research for the Josh Bersin Company, of course, you're heavily involved in all of these research endeavors and dissemination. So it really is a pleasure and an honor to have you on the podcast today to be able to talk more about this research. As we get started, I wanted to share Janet's bio with everyone. As I mentioned, Janet Mertens is VP of research at the Josh Bersin Company and is an experienced talent leader exploring next-gen people practices. She has spent 20 years designing strategies that transform work in healthcare, education, banking, and public sector organizations around the world. Empowering people to do their best work is her passion. And right now she's thinking about business transformation, technology, and work, healthy organizations, and the job market. And I could go on and on and on about your illustrious background and career, but I'll pause there, give you a chance to chime in. Anything else you would like to share with listeners about your background or personal context before we start talking about the report?
No, John, I think you hit all the notes. I am just thrilled to be here, and I'm looking forward to chatting about this topic that I know is so close to your heart and to mine.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So why don't you just start off by framing out for us the why behind this report? I mean, that's probably fairly obvious to people given the current context of the world we're in and the labor market and everything. But the Josh Bersin Company puts out lots of different reports. And I know this is one that you've been working on for a long time and has been a real strong emphasis. So why has this been a focus, and maybe lay out some of the methodology and some of those types of elements?
Sure. Well, and you hit the nail on the head. This is a wild time. It's no hyperbole to say that the labor market, the talent market, is unlike any we've seen in perhaps a very, very long time. We started out on this journey of researching recruiting and hiring and talent acquisition about a year ago, right at the heart of the pandemic. We have been talking to, at the Josh Bersin Company, we have the opportunity to talk to CHROs and HR executives and heads of TA daily, weekly. And so many of our conversations, as you would expect, John, were about hiring challenges, furlough periods, return to work, the great resignation. And so what we really wanted to do in this research was understand not only what's changed in the past couple of years and and explore some of these pressures that employers are facing in finding and keeping talent, but also what's working for the future, what's going to, make the most impact going forward. So just to kind of frame up the research a little bit, we went out and we started with conversations, really. I mean, the heart of this is conversations. And I want to share one to kind of kick things off. I was speaking with the head of TA at a major US airline. And, and very similar to the sentiment we heard across the board from others, her comment was, TA is coming back with a vengeance. We're ready to hire. We've got 3,000 plus open recs. Not only can we not find the people to hire into those roles, we also can't find the recruiters to support the hiring that we need to do. So, this is a complex problem, and that story really kind of set the stage for us. So we went out and talked with dozens of heads of TA to really get our arms around all of the different practices that recruiting is using, either traditional or next gen practices. And we put together a survey instrument that covers or explores the maturity with which organizations are deploying about 100 hiring practices. Everything in here from, how are you assessing candidates and, and onboarding in a virtual world, to how is your TA, function organized and how are you operating? What's your governance? What kind of internal mobility practices do you have in-house? How are you dealing with gig workers and remote workers? Really ran the gamut of practices. And so we surveyed about 600 companies for this research. We actually did the analysis on around 400 or so companies. We really wanted to focus on the challenges of companies with 500 or more employees. So this is based on about, close to 500 companies total. And, we did two things, John, with this research. One is, hey, let's look at what the maturity is today of TA as a function, as a domain. How is it situated in the business? And then let's look at which practices actually make a difference and who's doing them well. So those are the two aspects of the research.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that background and that overview. And yeah, having a combination of these conversations and interviews coupled with a survey instrument and data analysis, so that you can have a multifaceted mixed methods approach. I think it's always super helpful. And it's interesting. Obviously, finding talent to fill roles is a challenge. You mentioned even finding recruiters to help with the process of finding the talent is a real challenge. So this is multi-layered, and organizations are grappling with it at every layer. And in other podcasts and in other reports from the Josh Bersin company, you've talked about different approaches to attracting and retaining good talent, creating a nice culture, innovation, all those sorts of things. All of that contributes to it. But ultimately, we do have to be able to focus in on TA to better understand how to do it. You mentioned that there are some things that are actually working quite well that came out of the research. Maybe we can start there. I like to be positive. So what's working that we can continue doing or continuing to innovate on, and then we can start to get into some of those things that perhaps aren't working, and we need to be more agile and able to shift into the demands of the future of work.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I love let's start with the good news, right? So one of the things that we found that just really popped in this study was the story about brand and EVP. So as we started the research and then really dug into the data, we found an overwhelming number of companies are focused on brand, and it's not surprising given what we've been through in the last couple of years. Companies have, and even 10 years before that, right? The disruptions have been nonstop. But companies have really doubled down on employer brand and getting that messaging right, personalizing the brand, and adding to the EVP, right? The social contract between employer and employee has never, has changed tremendously. And so I think that's a really important part of the story. And the really good news is it's also one of the biggest areas or drivers of impact across not just talent outcomes, hiring people, keeping great people, engaging them, but also across business outcomes like financial performance and innovation and customer satisfaction. So when your brand is crystal clear and consistent and authentic, it's making a huge difference. Now, I'll shift the story a little bit, John, if you'll let me, and say that it is a good news story to know that companies are focused on it. I think it was the number one element in our research that companies are prioritizing. However, as we dug deeper, there is an opportunity here, I think, to really sharpen the tool belt and the tool set, I think, around brand. So what we were finding is the companies that are doing this really well, that are doing this most effectively, they are truly focused not just on a very slick careers page or adding more perks to the pile to say we've got more benefits and more well-being programs and virtual fitness classes, but really thinking through meaningful, inclusive, and authentic benefits, authentic EVP assets and interactions. And what we say in the report, John, is look, candidates and employees are not just looking for a job now, right? They are looking for a career, for a future. And so the companies that are doing this right are thinking more broadly about the EVP and the brand and making sure that they are not afraid to tell the good, the bad, and the ugly story. And they are really actively filling in with growth and opportunities for development, linking jobs to purpose, not just within the company and the impact you make on the company, but the impact you make on society, on the world, on the environment, because that is what employees are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do a great deal of research in this space myself. And so I can just reiterate everything you're saying that you've been finding in the recent reports out from the Josh Bersin company. I've found similar results in my various academic studies that I've published in peer-reviewed journals. This is all solid science. This is absolutely true that people want meaning and purpose. They want impact in the work that they do. I think everyone wants that, but particularly younger generations, younger millennials and Gen Z, they just expect it. Whereas I think prior generations, they might have wanted it, but they figure it out. We'll get there someday. Maybe that's something for later in my career or in retirement. That doesn't fly anymore. And younger employees expect it. They want it right now. Some people say that's entitled. I just think, that's them knowing their values and wanting to align a big part of their lives, their work life, with those core values. And I think that's actually to be applauded. So we have to wrestle with all of that. And that's a challenging thing in and of itself. Now, I know one point in the report, if we start to shift now and talk about what we can do better, at one point you talk about how the data demonstrates 75% of companies don't know how to recruit correctly. That's a staggering number. Talk to us more about that and unpack that a little bit for us. When you have so many companies, as you already alluded to, some companies have thousands of open requisitions and job postings that are unfilled. They don't know how to recruit effectively. What's going on there? What are the main problems that you see?
Yeah, it is a staggering statistic, and I've been a researcher in HR and talent for a long time. And when you see stats like that, it's just it causes you to really stop and certainly scrutinize, but also to really kind of get under the covers. And what we found is, look, recruiting has been around for decades. It's one of the longest standing parts of HR. It's every company that has more than 2 or 3 employees needs to recruit. What we found is so much of what's happening right now is a bit additive, right? So companies are reacting. We saw it in our healthy organization research with well-being as companies tried to, sort of strived to take care of their employees and add more benefits to the pile. The same thing is happening in recruiting. We saw the, explosion of virtual hiring tools and onboarding and interview tools and interview intelligence. What the 25%, that cream of the crop, the pioneers are doing is they're taking a pause. They are stopping and being very intentional now about what they have and how to address the human element of recruiting. And at the end of the day, hiring is a human to human process. It is not transactional. It is a relationship. And so, so a couple of examples that I'll share with you of companies who are doing this really well. So McDonald's is a great example. We talk about McDonald's in the research, and I love their story because they truly are one of our North Star, our level 4 companies. We call them creative and human-centered. And what McDonald's has done has been astounding. They have incredible volumes for hiring, over 1 million restaurant employees or frontline workers every year in the U.S. alone. So huge numbers. That's a challenge in and of itself. But on top of that, they are also grappling with a set of hiring managers who effectively are not HR. They are, and recruiters, they are not HR. They are restaurant managers, restaurant owners and operators all across the country who are, juggling and wearing many hats. So they were really struggling with their solution. It was very fragmented. There wasn't good, consistency across the board. And what McDonald's did was went out and co-designed a brand new solution. They were not afraid to sort of blow up their ATS, and they custom designed collaboratively, I should say, designed an entirely new lightweight solution with their owners and operators and candidates in mind. So they really designed it for those irresistible experiences. And what they came up with was a solution that is a chatbot. So they really applied technology very precisely to allow a candidate to apply for a job and be scheduled for an interview in the time it takes to drive through a drive-through. And because they designed it with the owners and operators who were ultimately the recruiters and hiring managers, the uptake was something like 98%. So, these companies that are doing this well are leading the way, and we have a lot that we can learn. And that's what I think we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get more into that human-centered talent acquisition component. That's the subtitle to this report. And I like how audacious the report is with the definitive guide of recruiting. Go big or go home, right? So I think that's good. That's great. And then you already honed in a little bit on the idea that this has got to be human-centered. And many organizations, they just have additive kind of tack on experiences. And in my experience, as I've looked around at companies and what they're doing in this space, it just seems so much of it is completely impersonal. So much of it just doesn't even do the bare minimum in terms of meeting expectations of applicants and fostering relationships with them, because it may not work out now, but they may be a better fit for a different job posting that comes up a week from now or a year from now. And so you're only hurting yourself if someone goes through the process and has a terrible experience and says, oh, I never want to work for that company. And so having more of a human-centered approach is essential. And I guess the challenge is, especially when we're short-staffed, we don't have enough recruiters, like how do you take more of a human-centered, personalized approach to something where we seemingly have less and less human capacity to deal with the threat, the amount of work that is going on. So how do you utilize technology and then couple that with personalized human-centered approach so that we can have a good applicant experience?
Yeah, well, and I think there's a couple of things there, John. Let's hone in on the recruiter experience first of all. So candidate experience has reigned supreme in talent acquisition for years now, right? And most companies, not all, but most companies are paying attention to it, investing in it, trying to personalize the EVP, the brand, the brand messaging, and certainly the hiring process itself. Where the top performing, the best companies in the world are miles ahead, is they are switched on to the fact that candidates are not the only individuals inside or the only humans inside the hiring process. So they are really investing heavily in creating and designing irresistible experiences for candidates, to be sure, but hiring managers, recruiters, new employees. I mean, we all know that story of, having this great experience coming into a company, and day two, you're sort of dropped on your own and off you go, and there's no connection. So, even extending that hiring process beyond day 1, day 30, day 60. So these are companies that are paying attention. And, when we think about recruiters, I'll share the story of Scotiabank, which is a Canadian bank. They have really committed to not only their candidates, and we talk about human-centered hiring. When it comes to candidates, they're focused on hiring for potential. So that's how they're approaching this, right? They're not looking in the rear view mirror at skills and experiences and degrees, but rather what are those power skills, those behavioral, durable skills that the candidate brings to the table that may shift candidates from one job posting to an entirely other line of work, right? So that's the candidate side, but they're also focused heavily on the recruiter experience. And the story that the head of TA shared with me about the pandemic was, of course, like many companies, there was a hiring freeze during the pandemic, and the recruiters were all at risk of being furloughed or losing their jobs. What the company did is they pivoted and shifted. They decided to take that opportunity to place those recruiters back into the business, not back into the business, into the business, to learn new skills, learn about the business that they were serving, build relationships. And they invested heavily to do that. When those recruiters came back, they have been, just incredibly more empowered to truly serve and understand the business that they are, that are their clients. So it's been, it's stories like that that have really kind of set apart some of these companies.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I know one of the findings in the report, it talks about, this more traditional approach to linear internal mobility that we've seen, for generations in organizations. That doesn't seem to be working as well as a tool to attract and retain good people. Maybe you can talk to us more about how organizations can effectively put in place more agile processes that closely align and link new applicants, new people into work design and future opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is probably the most challenging part, and maybe most surprising in a way. Maybe the bad news story of the research is around internal mobility. We know inherently that employees and candidates are looking for growth and development and opportunities to move. And we also know that in this talent market, companies can't afford to rest on their laurels and depend on external sources of talent. Certainly, as industries converge and you're competing constantly, so. But I'll say we were surprised to see in the research that while 70–80% of companies that we talk to say absolutely we want to hire from within, the extent that that is happening is really limited to posting jobs online. So internally, right? So we've posted all of our jobs online. So if candidates or employees want to hire for, want to apply for them, they have visibility to them. And that's simply not enough. We know that, there are a lot of factors at play here. And when we think about internal mobility, there are sort of three areas that companies are thinking through. One is certainly process, right? What are the types of opportunities? They don't need to be jobs only. They could be cross-functional projects or stretch assignments or rotation. So companies like Bon Secours Mercy Health are really thinking differently about what are the types of internal opportunities available. So that process piece, the technology piece, to be sure, the talent marketplace is, as a market, is just exploding. Everyone is, every vendor that we talk to has a component of their solution that allows for talent marketplace. But here's the third and most important piece, perhaps, and that's the culture of mobility. Having and building and fostering a culture of mobility and growth and movement is not an easy thing to do. And that is where many companies are still struggling. How do you handle and navigate around talent hoarding, for example, managers who don't want to give up their best talent, employee fear for job security? If I put my hand up and say, I would like to take this job and I don't get it, what message have I sent? Will there be retaliation? So that culture of mobility is really a challenge. And that's where our level 4 companies are just incredible examples of how to kind of address that challenge and tackle it head on.
Wonderful. Janet, thank you so much for all of the insights and explaining more about this report. We've only just scratched the surface, but I note the time and I'm going to have to let you go here in just a minute. So I encourage listeners to go out, check out the full report of the Josh Bersin Company. And there's so many other great resources there as well. I can't recommend it enough. Before we wrap up for today, I just wanted to give you a minute to share with listeners how they can connect with you, where they can find this report and others, and then give us the last word on the topic for today.
Great. Thank you, John. Well, it's been a pleasure to join you. This is, as you say, we've just scratched the surface. There's a lot to unpack here. I am more than happy to say that our report findings can be downloaded from the joshbersin.com website, so folks can go there. I think we'll have that link in the text available. The report itself is for members only. If you're interested in finding out a little bit about the Josh Bersin Company membership, you can certainly reach out to us. And, in closing words, John, this is an exciting time. I really think this is an optimistic, the silver lining out of all of this is there is an appetite for change. And our big, our word cloud, sort of word of the day for this research is that talent acquisition is ripe for change. It's evolving. And that was the number one sentiment that we heard. And I think as HR professionals and in the TA space, this is a really incredible moment for us, and I'm excited to see organizations really kind of strive forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janet. It's been a pleasure. I encourage, again, listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Janet and her team can do for you. Check out the research at the Josh Bersin Company. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.